Ken, thanks so much for the time. You're watching that game last night and you're thinking what?
Well, I mean, same as you guys. I think that I couldn't believe that Iowa hit the gas in the second half as well as they did, as strong as they did. I think LSU just ran out of steam
Mhm.
and couldn't keep up with the pace. I think last year in the national championship game, Iowa was absolutely exhausted from their Final Four matchup. And last night, it was clear that they were conditioned, ready, and weren't going to be denied this time.
Ken, do you think a lot of the other stories swirling around LSU this year got to them a little bit in the sense that is that one of the reasons they might have been tired? Because there was a lot of controversy in the last couple of weeks, in part because of your story, but other things as well.
I mean, there's just a lot of sort of psychological baggage, I think. I mean, going into that tournament just in general. And then, I mean, one of the things I think Kim Mulkey does so well is prepare and motivate her teams. And honestly, like going into last night's game, I would have thought LSU would win just because Mulkey is so good at turning this outside noise. You know, these two coastal media outlets that are attacking LSU and just coming after us. They don't want us to win. She's really good at weaponizing that outside attention, but it also has to wear on those players. I mean, the grind in general, the attention with Angel Reese, and her ankle was clearly not 100% even going into the game. It's just a lot, and I kind of wasn't surprised to see them run out of steam.
Babb is joining us. He's an award-winning author. He writes for the Washington Post, and he wrote the profile of Kim Mulkey that she stood up and railed against again before it ever hit publish. No one even knew, and she's saying, I've hired lawyers, and I'm going to sue the Post for defamation if there's anything inaccurate in the story. Ken, she said that you spent 2 years working on this piece. Is that true, first of all? And when you set out to first write the story about Kim Mulkey, what was your approach?
I mean, she and I met in December 2021 and had a 45-minute off the record conversation. And it was actually very pleasant. I mean, I definitely liked her. I can't speak for her, but we seemed to get along well. I mean, there was definitely a vibe there. She was curious about my background and, you know, kind of what I told her. She's definitely just generally suspicious of media outlets, in particular, the Washington Post. And you know, kind of what I told her is if there are two Americas, I've lived in both of them. Yes, I live and work in Washington, D.C. at a media outlet, but I was born and raised in rural South Carolina, super rural South Carolina, the Tickfaw of South Carolina. And I think she was just interested in my perspective. You know, I put it aside. I mean, I wouldn't say that I worked on it for 2 years consecutively, but I paid very close attention, became even more fascinated in her last year during the run, and kind of hit the gas on the reporting on this, what you saw over the weekend in February.
So, Ken, what was your reaction when Kim Mulkey started talking about the article? You know, you're sitting at home or wherever you are, and all of a sudden you realize, oh boy, a lot of people are going to read this.
Yeah, no pressure. You know, I think just in general, my job is a little bit hard to explain to the average reader. I mean, I do the long form feature. There's a lot of nuance. I don't do hit pieces, but I guess that's in the eye of the beholder. And I knew that in this case, even before her press conference, I needed to be very fair, very balanced, see things from multiple perspectives so as to do right by Kim and also the people who have played for her. And that includes the people who love her and the people who don't. So I had a responsibility to cross every T, dot every I. And then when she did that, from a legal and ethical perspective, I had to go back and make sure that everything was done the right way. And it was.
Babb is joining us. He wrote the piece and the profile about Kim Mulkey for the Washington Post that clearly grabbed her attention and ire. So, Ken, she threatened the Washington Post that she's hired all these lawyers and she would sue you guys for defamation. Have you heard one peep from Kim Mulkey's lawyers?
I haven't heard anything from anyone on that side since the story ran. So I don't know what's going to happen. I know that story is not defamatory in any way. If anything, I think people who read it, I mean, it's almost 7,000 words. There are a lot of flattering words in those 7,000. And I think if Kim were actually to spend some time and read the work, she was how hard I actually worked to make that pretty fair. And honestly, in the reporting, the hard thing was getting people to tell me why they loved her. I think they're naturally suspicious and protective of Kim, even if they care for her. And having them confide in a reporter who they don't know, who they're probably naturally suspicious of because Kim is so explosive, it was really hard to get people to explain what it is that's so great about her and why people are so loyal to her.
Kent Babb is joining us from the Washington Post. He's an award-winning author. He wrote the profile of Kim Mulkey. So from what you found from people who love her, why do they love her? And for people who have bad relationships with her or don't like her at this point, why do they dislike her?
The people who love her, just for one, I mean, she draws every last drop of greatness out of you. And yeah, it sucks. It's uncomfortable. And somebody put it to me as structured failure. Like she just moves the goalpost constantly on how good you can be and what you might be capable of. And her loyalty. I mean, like if you're on Team Mulkey, she will go to the wall for you for the rest of her life. On the other side, if you cross her, she sees it as a deep betrayal of everything that she stands for. And if you don't listen to her because she knows the way, she knows how to win, she knows how to succeed, and this is not in dispute. But if you do it a different way, if you don't follow her path, she sees that as a betrayal. And there is no coming back from that. And it's tough. I had a former Baylor player text me after the press conference last week and tell me that I was getting a little bit of a taste of what it's like to live in Mulkey world. It's just all weapons hot, and it's just there's no calming her down, and it's just a bizarre experience. And I don't think I could have cut it in her program.
Ken, do you think Kim Mulkey, and this is an old move by great coaches to use the media as bulletin board material? Like she has a purpose with what she was saying last week, right? I mean, I'm thinking Bill Belichick and different people through the years who just hate the media, but it always felt like, oh, I'm doing this because I can use it to an advantage. Is she getting an advantage by coming out against the media?
I mean, look at how they played against UCLA. And again, I mean, last night I thought that through three quarters, I mean, that was, a back and forth tug of war against a team that I think on paper is superior. I mean, Iowa is superior on paper. And LSU easily could have won that game because they were so motivated. I would love to have been a fly on the wall to hear what Kim was saying to her players, to the people around the program, because I would bet any amount of money that she was using all of this as an us against the world. You guys can shut it out if you want, or you can use it as jet fuel all the way to another national championship. But they just couldn't keep up last night. They just didn't quite have enough to keep up with Caitlin and the rest of the Hawkeye program.
Kent Babb is joining us again, award-winning writer for the Washington Post, wrote a profile of Kim Mulkey. You may have heard about it because, well, you can read it right now in the Washington Post, but also Kim Mulkey used one of her NCAA tournament press conferences specifically to rail against it before it ever gotten published. I mean, Ken, she called you some pretty terrible names. I mean, I know that journalism is not for the thin-skinned, but as she's up there really slicing at your character, claiming you're slicing at her character, which, is debatable. You could read the piece for yourself, but slicing at your character, how did you interpret that? How did you take that?
Well, I don't think I'm sleazy. I don't know what you guys think, but I'm pretty confident
a little,
in my non-sleaze.
A little sleazy in a good way.
Don't want to put you on the spot there. But look, I mean, I know that I did everything right in this process, and it is easy to cut corners. I would challenge anybody to dive deep into my history of reporting on some of the most prolific, famous figures in American sports. And, I covered a little thing called the NFL for a long time. And I wouldn't say that NFL teams are very good at letting you slide if you screw up. And, I've got a pretty good reputation. So I got a good support system, great editors at the Post. And I know that they believe in me and my process. I took a lot of time, used a lot of thought. I know I did everything right. It's not comfortable to be called out like that, but it is part of the job, and it's all good. I mean, I know that what she was saying is not true. Just like I think what she suspected I was going to write may not be true. It's just that that's not what I was going to write the whole time. I just wish she had had a conversation with me.
Can I ask a quick question? And Maggie, you mentioned this earlier too. The suing for defamation thing is, as a writer, that I know you're trained to obviously avoid that. What has to happen for something to rise to the level of actual defamation? Isn't there some sort of intent involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll couch this by saying I'm very much not a lawyer. So what I'm going to say is just my own interpretation, and I don't know for sure. I didn't go to law school. I believe, the it has to rise to actual malice, which means that I have to knowingly take false information and report it. Like, essentially, if somebody told me a lie and I knew it to be a lie, I would say, you know what, I'm putting this lie in here anyway, knowing that it was not true. So it's hard. And again, like, I know that there's nothing in my story that rises to defamation. If anything, I think that people were disappointed that it was as flattering in some cases as it was, that I didn't go all the way in. But that's not the story that I ever set out to write. I wanted to know how this little 5'4" white lady from the country of Louisiana can connect with and emotionally manipulate these people who look nothing like her, who are from places that are not like her, and in many cases live and think unlike her. She is an unbelievable coach that, people keep asking me if I think it's fair to compare her to Bobby Knight. I actually don't, because I think Kim is a way better coach than Bobby Knight.
Ken Babb joining us of the Washington Post, an award-winning writer. His stuff has been featured in the Best American Sports Writing and many other places. Wrote a profile of Kim Mulkey. She was not pleased with it, even though she claims that she has never read it. Ken, and just a couple more for you. And again, thanks so much for taking some time for us. And we know you're busy. I think because of the era that we're in now, whether it's Me Too or George Floyd or whatever, we're relitigating things from the past, right? And kind of combing back over people's pasts and saying, man, this wasn't right, this was right. And I think people were expecting this sort of bombshell. Because with Kim Mulkey, I think you kind of expect anything, right? Like there was going to be something in her past that was going to be really maybe distasteful. That was not in your piece. There was nothing like that in your piece. This was just a profile of a coach and of this woman. What did you want people to take away from this profile? I mean, it was really well written. What do you want people to take away from it?
I mean, the thing that I was curious about, which I hope other people are curious about, is that there is a cost to this greatness. And, you look at the greats, like in sports, regardless of which sport we're talking about. And for the most part, you don't have a kind of normal, perfect, idyllic life. And Kim's, I think, is extreme in that way. And so is her career. I mean, like, you put all of your kind of attribute points in the professional side and you're so damn good at it, there has to be something that gets taken away from. So I just wanted to find out what it was in her life, professional, personal, whatever, what it was that she sort of had to trade. I'm always looking for what that trade is. And in her case, she just tends to delete people from her life who get in her way, who question her process, who don't believe that her interpretation of success is the same as theirs. And that's tough. I mean, it's very zero sum. And the fact that she hasn't talked to family members in 37 years and just does not even speak to these people is sad to me. I mean, yes, you can accomplish all of these amazing things, but at the end of the day, what do you really want? And I think we have the answer on what Kim Mulkey wants and what she values, what she prizes. It's not what I value or prize, but I think we now know that it's not quite as simple as she's just a damn good coach and can go out there and game plan and go home and have a normal, beautiful, loving life. There is a huge cost involved in this greatness.
Ken, if you're going to do another deep dive on a coach, and you might be working on one already, who's a similar coach who you'd like to spend, not that you spent 2 years studying Kim Mulkey, is there somebody else at that level of intensity and interest to you that you want to maybe do a deep dive into someday?
Hell no. I don't know if, I need a break from the intensity that is Mulkey world. I mean, I'm always looking for people who are interesting and layered and complex and can tell us a little bit about ourselves. I mean, I think what Kim has gone through, at least on the personal side, is highly relatable.
Mm.
Like we all know somebody like Kim who is just like, do it my way or, get out of here. It's extreme with her, but I don't know. I mean, last week was a little bit of an emotional ringer, and I might need a little bit of a breather after that one just to sort of regather my thoughts.
We're about to see Danny Hurley on the national stage. He reminds me, I mean, he's way different background, but he's got a certain intensity to him. If you want to dive into him, I would read it. I'm just saying.
Well, that's one click. We'll take it.
Ken, again, thank you very much. Ken Babb, Washington Post, wrote the profile piece on Kim Mulkey. We thank you for your time, Ken. Appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again soon.